Well, I'm Tyler. This is Snuggles trying to run away. On today's episode, I wanted to talk to everybody about ball pythons. Now, whether you have had some experience with these guys in the past, if you are just starting out, or if you just want to get more information, there are a few things that I wish I had known before I got my first ball python. Snuggles was not our first ball python. He was actually... He's trying to run. Are you not down for recording today? Is that what's going on? Thanks for joining me today, guys. I just wanted to first off say thank you to everyone who did watch the video from last week. Anyway, the first thing, number one, that I wanted to talk to you about when it comes to ball pythons is hatchlings versus adults. When people adopt snakes or reptiles in general, they don't usually take into account how large the animal is going to get. And ball pythons are no different. When you adopt a hatchling ball python, they may weigh about 120 grams, maybe. And they won't be any longer than 10 to 12 inches. Those snakes are going to exponentially get larger. Snuggles is a 17-year-old ball python, and he's about 5.5 feet long. They do become sizable animals. They don't stay tiny forever. They don't even stay tiny for long. I'm going to bring out one of our other snakes here in a minute, Eris. She is a morph type, which we'll talk about later in the video. The second thing that I would like to talk to you about, online info when it comes to care, husbandry, and keeping of ball pythons. Now, there's no doubt that you can find all kinds of information when it comes to ball pythons in particular. They are one of the most popular reptiles in the pet trade. Finding current, non-outdated, or experienced information versus just information that's out there, it can be very different. Where is he? Oh, okay. Hi, bud. You want to come here? Aww. When it comes to pet stores like PetSmart, Petco, chain stores, their care information is typically, I wouldn't say completely wrong, but it's... We're going to see how this goes. But when it comes to finding information online, take everything you hear or read with a grain of salt. The best thing that you can do is speak to someone who's experienced with ball pythons, someone who's been keeping them for a number of years, with online info and how drastically different it can be depending on where you look. Facebook groups and forums and things like that are really good ways to get experienced keepers' opinions. I do always recommend that you research before you get an animal. If you are from the Central Valley, please go check out Central Valley Reptile Keepers. We'd love to have you join the page. Another thing that a lot of people don't really think about is how long these guys can actually last, how long they can live. The longest recorded specimen of ball python that was living in captivity is 47 years. And I'll put a link to that either in the description or a pop-up in the video of where that actually was. Where a dog or a cat may live 8 to 15 years, a snake will easily live 25 to 30 years. The next thing that I want to talk to you about is that ball pythons, in comparison to other snakes, especially colubrids, aren't the most interactive animals. I mean, you'll see them climbing on things and burrowing under the edge of their hides. Ours will do that. They'll shove their heads out from one side even though the opening's right there. I remember when I actually got my first ball python, it went from 1 to 3 within a month. And that's one thing that you do want to watch out with these guys is although they are very fun and easy to take care of, until you actually have a good chunk of experience, if you go from 1 snake to 3 snakes, that's still 3 different animals that you're paying attention to rather than 1, and making sure that you have that husbandry and care down properly before you look at getting another animal, which is something that I definitely wish I had done. They are notorious for hunger strikes, which is where they will essentially go off of food for days, weeks, or even months at a time. Now, once you have multiple years experience with your animal and what their normal is, because each snake will have a different normal, you can kind of tell when something's wrong with your snake. The biggest thing with hunger strikes in ball pythons is if they start losing, then your animal should be taken to the vet. This can be a sign of all different kinds of things. Right in the camera lens. That's great. I love it. A snake that goes on feeding strike can be one of the most stressful times when you are a new keeper. Try not to stress about it. Like I said, these snakes can go for weeks or even months without food, especially a very well-established adult like Snuggles. He could probably go a solid 8 to 12 months without food and then be perfectly fine. Now, he has gone off of food for 1 or 2 months. Typically this is throughout the breeding season or if he's getting ready to go into shed. I'm gonna go ahead and put him up and we'll go ahead and get Eris out. So this is Eris, and as you can see, she's very different in comparison to Snuggles. Morphs, and that's the reason that I brought her out. Peter, the ball python you saw in my last video, is a fire bee, which means his genetics consist of the fire gene, the spider gene, and the pastel gene. Eris here, on the other hand, is a banana black pastel Mojave, but with morphs comes a lot more variety, especially when it comes to ball pythons. That is one of the reasons why they are one of the most popular and most kept. There are over 200 listed morphs on Morph Market. And if you haven't heard of Morph Market, it's a great website to see what kind of ball pythons or snakes, lizards, and vertebrates that are available. You get a lot of variety and differentiation. You get a lot of different colored and patterned snakes. But one thing that I will warn is not every seller on there is reputable, and the site itself, morphmarket.com, does not do any of the transactions between seller and buyer. There is an app called Snake Keeper available for iOS. I'm not sure if it's available for Android, but it will allow you to essentially list and track all of your reptiles, their feedings, their poops, their sheds, even their can all be tracked on this one app. And the last thing, I did want to give a shout out to Jimmy Cruz from Ball Life. He actually produced Eris. We did not buy her directly from Jimmy, unfortunately. We did get her secondhand, but regardless, she is a beautiful, beautiful animal, and just wanted to say thank you to Jimmy for producing her. If you guys are interested in ball pythons, especially some of the more higher end stuff, and some of the single and double gene animals, Jimmy's probably one of the best local breeders that I've met so far. He has awesome genetics that he's working with, and he makes some awesome animals. Alright guys, I think that about sums it up for the day. I wanted to say thank you for joining me for a few minutes during your busy days. I know this year has been pretty hectic for everybody, especially here in California right now. We're dealing with wildfires on every single side here in the Central Valley. Thank you to all those first responders who are out there on the front lines keeping us all safe, and hope that everyone makes it out of there safe and without any issue. But other than that, guys, on a lighter note, I hope you all have a great day. Thanks again for being here. Make sure you like, subscribe, and check out our Patreon if you want to help support the channel more. Any money that is donated on Patreon goes directly back into the care of these animals and the content that I make on this channel.